Coach, you've heard a lot about the experience up the middle in your group. Just what has that group done to elevate this room?
So here's the biggest thing, from schoolwork all the way to like football in general. You got Cole and you got Rusty, who are actually like really doing some serious mentorship. And so Dennis brings experience because of the fact that he started first at center the entire time, and now he's freed up and he gets to play ball and he's having a really good time. So that's the biggest change in the experience of the inside three. It's just letting them play ball and they're having a good time. And Rusty sees the whole field and Cole sees the whole field, and now we have a much more intelligent football team. Instead of just, making one call, we can see the whole thing.
And then from last year, you guys flipped the tackles. What did that do for each guy, and how does that make them better going into this year?
Caleb's had a phenomenal fall camp. I mean, it's been unreal to see him just honestly just go back to the roots. We were, I kind of locked them in last year, and there's only one thing they can do, and we've been able to open up his playbook to what he's allowed to do, and he feels really comfortable over there to the right tackle, and it's been awesome for him to see that. Monroe literally looks, I say this all the time, it looks like he's having a smoke break out there, because when he wins a rep, it literally looks like he's doing nothing. So he's one of the more freakish tackles I've ever been around, just because of the fact of he's so long and he has an incredible anchor. So it's awesome to watch that.
And Coach McGuire touched on it this morning, but just 9 of your 10 and you're too deep played college football. What does that do to have that depth and experience in the
There's only okay, this is what that does for an O-line coach. The only screaming I'm doing is when we're messing up, when we should absolutely not be messing up. The rest I get to actually coach, because there's real questions. It's not panic at the disco, you know what I mean? We're not freaking out. And so now with that actually game experience and depth, you get to coach and you get to see different parts of football instead of everybody, trying to just figure out one specific play. So that's good for that.
Last one from me. Jacoby Jackson seems like he's really changed the body and gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
What have you seen from him just so far?
He's done an awesome job. And so the biggest thing with him changing his body completely, I had to push him out to tackle at one point just to see if he could do it. I'm just playing with pieces during fall camp so they're not getting monotonous and bored. And we push him out to right tackle, and guess what? Left tackle, and he can do it. And so now it's like that's what I mean by you can open up these guys' windows, and he's done a phenomenal job. And so he's going to be somebody we're counting on to be in there and finish the games for us.
Last year you were talking about some of these O-line were going around like Hamby. How has this team changed from last year than used to be?
I mean, drastically. I mean, the mature, like I was telling him, the maturity rate is unbelievable. I mean, it's out of control to see that actually they're like the care factor, without me saying anything, rude, like the care factor is there, and it's elevated big time. And last year it was everybody's trying to figure out where they fit on the team, who's the who, and who's going to get the media spotlight kind of thing. And now it's like a level playing ground where they understand we're really good, we can be really good. And so that's what I mean by the maturity level. It's changed a lot.
With that, there's expectations that our second year, the brand is installed now. What do you see how this year is going to be different for the fans and for this team?
I think opposed to last year, there was still a lot of figuring things out, and it was week to week. Even throughout the season, we're still learning. They're still learning how I coach. They're learning how the OC is. They're learning how the head coach is. The difference is, it's from the jump now. We don't have to go, there were so many slides that Coach McGuire had to take out from, team meetings because it wasn't, these are common to us as football, you know what I mean? So that's what I mean by they're going to attack it. That's the difference. The walkthroughs are faster. Everything's more engaged. There isn't a bunch of questions. It's all about, in my opinion, 60 minutes of us, we're going out there and we know exactly what it is. And from the jump, we should go hit people in the mouth.
As this team, as the South End Zone's coming together from your time here to now, what does it feel to have the support from 60 minutes of us with the fans and getting ready for that first game at home?
I mean, let's go back to the 37 renderings that I've seen since I was a player to, as a GA and all the way to here. It's awesome to see actually the break ground and open it up and, create the largest football facility in the nation. I mean, it's absolutely awesome to see. And I think, it's just going to be a wow factor out of wow factor each week that we see stuff going on over there.
Stephen, can you tell us a little bit about your competition for the second spot at tackle? Like your Matt Keelers and Ty Buchanan, how limited is Ty being, and where is he kind of getting ready for going into the game?
Ty is crushing it right now, I will say that. I mean, Ty over there at the right side, I've got two really solid right tackles right now. Keeler's sitting there, and he knows full well he has to keep up with Monroe. Both of those are very healthy competitions. And so currently right now, I've got guys that are like battling out of their minds to try to get into one, and that's what you want a football team to look like. You want it to be where you go in confidently, fully knowing like we're planning on beating a team and getting the twos in. So that competition factor has been awesome to see. But both of them have been battling it out. It's hard to see just with what Caleb's been doing and with what Monroe's doing. It's hard to beat them out. You're hoping for them to fail, but at the same time they're on your team. You know what I mean? Not me being a player from that perspective, but at the same time it's high level. I mean, Caleb gets a good rep. Here comes Ty. He gets a good rep. Monroe goes and locks someone down. You know, Keeler goes in there. He's battling to lock someone down. So the competition is real and it's awesome to see. But the ones want to stay ones, and so that's where you really want to be as an O-line.
Coach, in general, linemen are pretty underrated athletes, but is that really, especially true with you guys, how aggressive you are on fourth downs and the pace you guys play with?
I mean, that's kind of a backhanded compliment. I like it, but so the difference is underrated athlete. It all depends on what it is. The difference is the best story I can tell you is my wife, when we were dating, was convinced that she could beat me in a 40-yard dash. I literally looked at her and I said, "That's a stupid bet." I said, "Let's do it," right? And so her trainer at the time was like, "He's going to whoop you," and she was like, "No, I'm gonna beat him." We take off in the race at the 30-yard line. I flip my hips around and I start backpedaling, looking at her, and I'm like, "You lost." So when you say underrated athlete, it all depends on who the athlete is. You know what I'm saying? The difference is I'm going to call these guys fat boys, but the difference is they're not the typical human. Some of these guys can run, a 4.9. Like Caleb's going to run a 4.9. Mm-hmm. So when we go for it on fourth downs, it more comes into the underrated. I want them to think that we're underrated athletes because of the fact that when we go tempo, the big D tackles at the ends are not going to be able to hang with us. Make sense?
Stephen, I don't know if we'll get a chance to talk to you again before then, but
yeah.
What will the weekend mean to you when Mike is inducted into the Hall of Fame?
I think there's going to be a lot of tears in the crowd, and I think along the field. And I know Coach Kingsbury's coming back here too. And so I think that's going to be a moment. As I think Tommy McVeigh also has already gone in, or if he's going in that tape too. I think it's one of those things where when you look, like when that stadium erupts and like this city is united with Coach McGuire and they were united with Coach Leach, I think it's one of those things where it's going to be a very awesome moment and just a surreal moment just to see how all of Lubbock is united and back and the community's back. And you have someone like Coach Kingsbury, who was his first quarterback, back in the building with him.
How did you kind of connect with Mike, so to speak? In other words, how did you relate to him in terms of what he wanted from a football player?
He was he loved me because he loved the O-line. He really did. He had a soft spot in his heart for the O-line. The difference is he was convinced he could also coach O-line. So many times he would come into our O-line room and he would be, and he'd literally go and it's a TE and you just bump butts, and we'd all have to be like, great. And the difference is it's not that easy, but at the same time it is kind of that simple. That's kind of the idea of it. And then he'd leave the room and then we'd keep going. But where he loved us is one of Leach's favorite characteristics is he liked to pin people against each other. So like who could beat who. And so he would antagonize the O-line all the time into who could fight who. And it was one of the funniest things because that would always cause a commotion during practice. And then of course, ultimately, no one would ever fight over it, but he was always trying to pin you against somebody else because he was trying to get you engaged and sparked and ready to go. And so that's one of the things that, he loved me because he knew I was going to play every snap. I go from right guard to center to left guard, and I didn't blink an eye. Wherever I could get on the field, I got on the field. But that was kind of our relationship was just awesome with that.
So whenever he would pitch you guys against each other, did you have any memorable scrap with a teammate?
I have so you can't do, like it's the old school, line up on the board. Can't do that anymore. So the most memorable one was he's pitting me and Rylan Reed against each other, okay? So it's going back and forth, and we get all the way to the Cotton Bowl. It's the final game. We're in the old Dallas stadium before they tear it down. And he's like, bull in the ring, Rylan Reed and Hamby. And so little did I know, he'd already talked to Rylan, and he was like, why don't you just go ahead and fight him now since you think you can take him? So we get flat back, we're ready to go off. I don't realize what's happening. I fire off. Rylan lifts up immediately and punches me as hard as he can in the face. And then we kind of battle back and forth. And so that was one of the epic moments of Mike Leach, and he's over there dying laughing. He's like loving it. And so I come off the sideline, I'm like, what was that? He was like, oh yeah, Leach told me to do that. So those are the type of things that he would do, and we'd have a lot of fun with it.